guys. Let's do it. Good afternoon, everybody. What a wonderful sunny and windy day this is. My name is Nancy Navarro. I'm the Montgomery County Council President, and I want to welcome all of you today. As you know, we are in the middle of our budget deliberations. We have had extensive public hearings. We've heard from over 150 residents on all kinds of issues. And of course, we have been very busy meeting with residents as well as looking at a lot and reading a lot of emails and correspondence. It is really wonderful every year to acknowledge the amazing participation of our county residents when it comes to priorities and our budget. And so we are here today because, of course, for myself as a lifelong education advocate, I am committed, of course, to doing everything in my power to ensure that this budget stays true to our stated commitment of education funding. And as you know, County Executive Elrich did recommend fiscal year 2020 operating budget, giving us a very good starting point. But we definitely wanted to do everything possible to honor what many of the PTA advocates, many parents, students constantly expressed to us, which was please fully fund the Board of Education's recommended budget request, because within that particular budget request, there are elements of great importance to our residents. I want to acknowledge the hard work of the Board of Education, and you will hear soon from the board president, Shebra Evans, and also the superintendent, because I think that they have really led the way in not only exploring strategic innovative solutions that will lead to more academic achievement, but they're really putting forth Chris Lloyd from MCA, we have Lynn Harris from MCCPTA, Jennifer Martin from MCA as well, Heather Carroll Fisher. We have also Laura Stewart, who's been doing a lot of work in advocacy. And the truth of the matter is that we know that as funding becomes more and more strategically tight, we also have to be strategic in how we utilize that funding. So we are here today to basically hear from the county executive and the board president as well as the superintendent on a proposal to fully fund the school system's budget. It is a proposal that in many conversations that I have had with County Executive Elrich as well as the superintendent and Ms. Shebra Evans, really stressing the need for us to move forward in this way. I'm pleased to know that through this collaboration, we are able to do this. I'm also pleased that I am joined by Council Vice President Katz, as well as the Chair of the Education and Culture Committee, Council Member Rice, who's also been an amazing leader at the state level as well, helping us with Kerwin, but also leading the charge here locally. And this is, I think, also really critical because we know that the projected school enrollment in our county continues to climb, and we know that just in fiscal year 2020, we expect 164,777 students in our public school system. And this is on top of the additional 23,847 students added to the system from 2008 to 2018. We also know that we continue to have increases in farms rate, in ESOL percentages, in students that have issues of mobility. And all of this combined really calls for all of us to stay true to this commitment of school funding. We also understand that fully funding our school system is part of a larger and much broader economic development strategy. We know and we are mindful that the quality of our schools is a major draw to the county, and we also have been engaged in conversations about the need to expand our tax base and to be a lot more strategic regarding this. But it's also about ensuring that all of our students have the opportunity to realize their individual potential. And we are very excited to be here today, standing here and saying that this very important component of our yearly annual budget can be addressed. And again, I want to express my appreciation for the hard work and the collaborative nature, which I will have to acknowledge in years past was not as collaborative and not as positive. And I have to say that I am really grateful to the fact that we can work in this fashion in order to realize this. Of course, we will have a committee session, Education and Culture Committee session, to go through the specifics and also the mechanics of this particular approach. But we are here today basically to hear from both county executive as well as the school system as to how we can make this happen. So now I'd like to turn it over to County Executive Elrich. I do want to express my appreciation for Executive Elrich in hitting the ground running with his budget, particularly paying close attention to the continuum of education, because it doesn't just start, of course, in kindergarten. It starts earlier. And we've worked together to launch an early care and education initiative, and he has announced $7 million to begin to put a down payment on that initiative. And so when it comes to education, I think we all understand that it has to start there. And so really appreciate that commitment. So with that, Executive Elrich, please join me on the microphone.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not going to go through an elaborate discussion of the school system and why we're doing all this. I think Nancy laid it out really well, and I think we all know why we're here and why we are trying to provide funding for the schools. I want to start by thanking one person and one group of people that I don't think that got mentioned, and one is Cheryl Kagan for her work on the 911 bill. The 911 bill is one of the reasons we're able to stand here today, because it's going to result in additional funding for Montgomery County. And as the state assumes more of the costs of the 911 service, it's freeing up dollars that the county otherwise would have been spending. And so the impact of this bill is providing us some of the money we need to make this work today. And the other group of people I want to acknowledge, I'll add a third group, is first of all the state delegation in Annapolis. They worked really hard. I spent a lot of time in Annapolis this year, and every chance I got and every chance the delegation got, when we came to talking about schools, we raised twin issues. We said we need money for construction and we need money for operations, and that it wasn't enough just to give us construction money. We needed money to help support the operations of the school system. And if you gave me money for operations but didn't give me construction money, I couldn't deal with the overcrowding issues. So we needed both. And this legislature worked all the way till the end. I mean, a lot of this stuff was in play, and we had no idea what the numbers were going to be until the last couple of days, and in some cases the last day of the legislative session. I will say that our staff is looking at whether we can change the budget date from March 15th to April 15th. I know it's a charter change, but there's something to be said for doing a budget when you know what all the resources are that you're going to get from the state. Because had we known some of the things that were clear at the very end of the legislative session, we would have had a little bit more flexibility in the budget. And so it would be really good, I think, if we could figure out how to tie our budget to the state budget so that we know what kind of money we're playing with and we can distribute those resources more effectively. And I want to thank the advocates. You know, Craig was down in Annapolis, but Laura, you got called out. You know, the school community was down in Annapolis. We were all giving the same message. And if I'm going to be generous, I'll say all the other county executives, when we testified, we were testifying as a group. 5 county executives were going up and talking about school funding and talking about operations and about capital. And it was a different environment, and I was really happy to be part of that, and really happy I got to work with a lot of people who shared the concerns that we had. So basically what we've been able to do is, out of the 911 bill, we're going to have at least $5 million. By the second year, we're going to have a little bit more than that. We're not sure because we don't know how quickly all the phone companies will implement, but we're sure and safe in saying there's going to be $5 million that we can put into this project. And with the work we've been doing with the school system and looking at all the other money that's come from the state and things the school system is able to do within their parameters, we can make sure that the school system funds what it was they sought to fund, as well as deal with the raise issues that were made possible by the extra money that the state put in this legislative session for pay increases. And I'm glad to be in a county that's going to be able to take advantage of the pay increases. Not every county may be able to do that. So this is good news all the way around. Working with the school system has been a really cooperative endeavor, and I'll second Nancy's comments about, the kind of differences. I was on the council 12 years. The difference in working with the school system on a budget now is a world of difference from what it was when I was working as a council member 12 years ago. And to be able to work with people who are trying to find solutions and figure out how we do the job that we set out to do is really a big deal. It makes our job easier. It means that we can continue to come back to each other and say, are there different ways of making things work? What can we give here? How do we get to an answer that addresses everybody's needs? So I'll say I'm happy to be here, happy to be part of the solution, and happy to know that a lot of other people have made this solution possible. So I think we're going to have success on this school budget, and we're going to be able to do the things we hope to do, and also do the early childhood education piece, which I thought was critically important. Again, thank Nancy for your leadership on that. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and I'll give way to the next person.
Thanks so much. Thank you, County Executive. Now we're going to hear from Vice President Katz. We work as a team in terms of leadership on the council, and he is always very much available and willing to take on the tough items that we have in front of us, and I so much appreciate having him as my partner here on the council. Council Vice President.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you all for being here. Yeah, I'm a strong advocate for education from birth to career, and that's what we have to keep in mind. I'm actually a product of Montgomery County Public Schools. My mother went to Montgomery County Public Schools. My children went to Montgomery County Public Schools. Now, Craig Rice is going to tell you he also went to Montgomery County Public Schools, but I started before he did. I think that...
You started when they started.
Yeah. All right, now I'm getting all the feedback. All right, enough for that topic. I would, yeah. But each and every student deserves an equitable pathway to success, and that's what today is about. And I'm here to congratulate the council president and the county executive and Craig Rice and everyone else that's associated with this. But if we didn't all work together with the Board of Education, and I sincerely thank Shebra and everybody else, and Dr. Smith, everybody else associated with them, because if we didn't work together, we couldn't be here today. And so it takes so many of us to get here. We need to give people the tools necessary to enhance their academic instruction. That's what we're here today about. And I also want to say that I know that the Education and Cultural Committee, led by Councilmember Rice, and who I like to tease, as you can tell, was going to carefully examine the details of what we're going through today. But what we have today is a path for success, because a lot of this is about money. And if we have the proper amount of funding, we can get the pathway to be the proper pathway. So thank you all very much, and congratulations and thanks.
I would like to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Jawando, who serves on the Education and Culture Committee, as well as Councilmember Gabe Albornoz, who also chairs the HHS Committee, but is also an amazing leader and supporter of education. With that, I'd like to also now invite Council Education and Culture Chair Craig Rice, who I will have to acknowledge the fact that we met already as a committee, and under his leadership, we have also on the reconciliation list the amount of money necessary to fully fund Montgomery College operating budget request. As I said, this is about the continuum of education, and this is another priority, and I know he has been very, very firm and very vocal about the fact that we also need to address the issues of our college. So with that, Council Member Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Council President Navarro. Let me say that this is a great moment when we celebrate a time in which we understand the value of education and how important it is to our community as a whole. I really want to thank the council president and the superintendent and the county executive for rolling up their sleeves and hearing from the community about how important education is and why we need to fully fund this budget. I've always said this is about more than numbers. This is about people. And when we talk about equity in our community, led by our council president, who has said that we at the end of this term will have an equity policy, education is a firm component of that. It is the foundation of true equity. I've seen it from my parents who came from the rural South who were denied access to a quality education, and they came here to ensure that their son would be able to go to a school in which they knew that he would have access to a high quality education. The reality is that there's so many in our community today who still don't get that same access that I am fortunate to have. And it's why I continue to fight each and every day to make sure that we provide that access to more and more of our children. The great work that you'll hear that's going on in our school system from our superintendent and president of the Board of Education is indicative of that. And I will just let you know that despite what critics may say about Montgomery County Public Schools, the reality is we are addressing the equity and opportunity gap. You will see that our graduation rates are increasing. Our test taking and AP scores are increasing from students who are of color and or who are of lower socioeconomic means. Montgomery County is making progress. And so that's the reason why I want to make sure that we continue the funding behind that progress to make sure that it's accessible for more and more of our students. And so as the council president said, I look forward to looking over the proposal and analyzing to make sure that we have everything that we need for our schools. But I really appreciate both the county executive, the superintendent, and the council president rolling up their sleeves to understand and put at the forefront how much education matters to our community as a whole, and look forward to working with my colleagues on the Education and Culture Committee to make sure that we can ratify that as a part of this budget. So thank you.
I want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Tom Hucker, who has joined us, and also a big supporter of our school system, children in the school system, right? Yeah, kids in the school system. So, hey. So now we're going to hear from the school board president, Ms. Sherva Evans, who, again, I want to acknowledge her amazing collaborative approach to all of this, not just throughout the budget, but also as we work together to make sure that initiatives and programs, et cetera, are strategically being implemented here in our school system. School board president Evans.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day. So we're really happy to be here to continue working with our county executive and our county council members to ensure that Montgomery County Public Schools system has the required resources that we need to educate our more than 163,000 students. The fiscal year budget for 2020 was requested by the Board of Education, and it was really necessary to make certain that that funding continues to support the same level of services for our ever-growing student population, our rising costs, and our strategic accelerators around our work to make certain that we are closing this ever-persistent opportunity gap and that we're providing academic excellence for all. What we do know is if we fund our students today, that we can have significant impact on our county success in the future. So this is what I can tell you. We are very much aware that our school system budget is a large portion of the county's budget. So I want to take this opportunity to also thank some people, our leaders, our residents who have come out to testify on behalf of public education. What we do know is that our community values our public system. It's our community asset. It's our pride. And we want you to know that you can continue to hold us accountable for every dollar that will be spent, and most importantly, for every student that we are serving here in Montgomery County. Thus, the school board members are really eager to hear about the Kerwin Commission funding and how that will supplement the work that we have planned for our school system, but most importantly for our community as a whole. So what I'm going to do right now is going to turn it over to our superintendent Smith so he can continue talking about that work that we're doing here around our budget in 2020 and beyond, as well as our past 3 budgets. Thank you all for coming today and supporting our school system.
Dr. Smith, I do want to personally highlight for everybody how grateful I am to the fact that, as we deliberate, not just, as I said, during our budget process, but also during our sessions in education and culture and other places, it is rare to find a leader that not only articulates possible innovations, possible ways of looking at education from different angles, but really is willing to step up and do this. And so your work and working collaboratively with the Board of Education, addressing issues like dual language programs, looking at ways to bring STEM throughout the county, looking at ways to find more access, leveraging what we have in place, really is a testament to your leadership. And I just really want to personally thank you for doing this, because it is notable and it is noticeable out there in our communities.
Thank you so much, Council President Navarro, County Executive Elrich, and all of the other county council members and members of the local government. I say this often, I've only lived here 3 years, but I will say to the long-term Councilmember Katz, many, many years in the school system and beyond, it's not like this everywhere. You don't have a local government that supports schools to this level and this degree everywhere in this state or this nation. And while there are many needs, we have to not only talk about how much, we have to talk about how well we're doing with the money that's provided. And speaking of the money that's provided, in my 3 years here, Montgomery County Public Schools has received about $150 million new dollars that were legislatively mandated from the state and from the local government. That's maintenance of effort, that you hear that phrase thrown around a lot. 150. In addition to that, Montgomery County Public Schools has received about $130 million new dollars over maintenance of effort. That is money the local government provides that it did not have to provide. And it is noticeable. This school community has had decades of excellence. And for many years, it's paid attention to and worked on equity. But if we're really going to understand what it's going to take to get to equity, we're going to have to work like what's being done right now. Work together on behalf of all of our students, because excellence is not possible without equity, and equity is not possible without excellence, because who wants mediocre equity? Nobody wants that. So we have to forge ahead together in language, in STEM, in access to the most rigorous coursework, to career pathways, to foundational learning for every child across the entire system for all children. That's what we have to do. And that's going to require that our 23,300 employees engage, that our community advocates engage, that our local government continue to engage. All of those things make a positive difference. And if we keep working together, I have no doubt that we can see the equity increase and the excellence maintained over the coming months and years. Thank you so much to everyone involved in this today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And as we think about next year's budget, our ask will have to be larger as we think about retaining and recruiting our high-level, highly effective employees. So thank you so much, and have a good afternoon.
All right, so I only close by saying that when I served on the Board of Education, I had opportunities to travel the country for different national association, Board of Education Association conferences. And when you're here in Montgomery County, you hear a lot of criticism about the school system. But then when you travel, you have this weird situation where everybody is absolutely, extraordinarily trying to emulate every single best practice that Montgomery County has put forth. And so there is that disconnect sometimes, but I think it's great because it keeps us, in terms of this leadership role, it keeps us looking at continuous improvement constantly, and that's what we will continue to do. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up. If there are any questions, we could entertain a few questions. If not, yes.
Million is coming from?
For that, I'll ask the superintendent to talk about that. There, of course, was some state money that came through that helped The school system, of course, address some of those issues, and then there will be other areas where they're going to look at as well. Remember, this is a $2.6 billion budget, so identifying, being able to identify that amount should not be that difficult, but I'll let the superintendent.
Sure. As we think about the $17 million over maintenance of effort that we asked for, as we look at all of the different funds and we see what Mr. Elrich sends to the council, we'll be meeting tomorrow and we'll look at how all of the money fits together. But what's been made today is a firm commitment that we will be funded this year.
My question for President Warren, so how do you know that you'll get support from the rest of the council on this funding? Because I understand this is
The county council, of course, as you know, has a process, and so we will have a committee work session when we will take all of this into consideration. I think that by, the show of folks who are here today, I think you can get a sense that education continues to be a priority, and every conversation I've had with colleagues has always indicated that they want to do everything possible to fully fund the school system's budget. So it is my hope, as we work through the budget, that that we will have unanimous support for this approach. Well, this is important part of our budget process. It is important to be able to have a commitment from the executive as well as the school system that there is a collaborative solution to fully funding the school system. This is not something that is routine, and therefore this is almost more than a little bit over under half of the entire budget for Montgomery County. So being able to solve that part of the budget is really important as we work through the other parts. So what you're seeing here is leaders of the county coming together to announce that we have found a way to fully fund the school board's request for their operating budget. Yeah. So on next Tuesday, we're going to take a vote on the raises. And so as you probably were aware, yesterday we had a thorough conversation about the raises, the benefits, as well as some other issues such as OPEB. And we are looking at every single component in order to make decisions about how we will fund and what would be the extent of the funding of the raises. This is a council that likes to do everything possible to honor our collective bargaining agreements. And so we will be looking very closely at all of those elements. But most importantly, what we announced yesterday is that there is consensus that we have to now work together with the administration to find ways to structurally be able to provide clarity as our friends in employee associations work through their deliberations regarding contracts. And so I think that's an important feedback that we have heard, and I hope that we can work on that right after the budget.
Can County Executive Elrich answer a question?
Sure.
So you've been telling us recently about the savings plan and how the different parts of the county budget have to make a couple of savings. What happened to that?
I don't understand your,
Why is the additional funding from the 911 bill going to education instead of paying?
because in order to fund education, money had to come from somewhere. We've made changes in the county budget. My office made changes in my very own office to try to reduce expenditures. Where we spent money was on things like firefighters so we could cut down the overtime. Same with police. Those were our big increases in spending in terms of operations. But I come in December dealing with cuts in an existing budget and having to change a capital budget and put together this budget. We've already talked to the unions, and they're going to be sitting down and starting the process. We call it lean business processes. Some people like to think of it as Six Sigma processes. But it's a process where we're going to work with the unions to go through departments and figure out what jobs contribute to the mission of the county government and what jobs we can reposition. So that's a long process. It's not something you do in a couple of months in the midst of everything else. So our focus now begins to turn to how are we going to actually structurally make changes in the county. The same thing goes for procurement. We're looking really hard at how we procure things because none of us, at least on my side, have a lot of confidence that we're the most efficient procurers in the world, and we aim to change that.
Well, I need the money from the 911 bill to go toward other departments.
So we don't know how much it's going to be this year. We know, I feel safe about this number, and if everything, goes as planned, we may wind up doing better. There's some other things that may come up in the fall as we go forward. Part of the 911 discussion was about, would you, and this has to do with working with our healthcare system and our professionals, could the county and the healthcare, the hospitals, for example, help fund nurses that would reduce use of emergency rooms and reduce the use of ambulance services to drive down some of the costs that we're bearing right now, and also come up with more cost-efficient health outcomes. So we're looking at a range of things. That money, some of it I hope gets used to enhance some of the new 911 things. We're not doing video stuff yet. We expect to have the capacity to be able to have people, call in and provide live video, and so there may be some things we want to be able to fund in public safety as well.
So where in the budget, this might be for the other legislators, where in the budget can we make cuts to put into schools? I'm going to ask my question a little bit differently. Because where in the budget right now do you see room to take $9 million and put into schools?
I think, I've talked with the superintendent. They've already identified some savings they're going to be able to realize without reducing, services. So I trust that when we all got together and said we've got a package that works, that everybody will do the things they need to do to make the package work. It doesn't serve any of us to say we've got a plan and then not execute it. So I've identified some money, and we're going to make that money available. And we'll be sending over whatever we need to do. We haven't figured out whether it's a supplemental or an amendment to our budget to recognize the additional revenues that'll be in the budget that then, of course, the council would have to appropriate for the schools. But I'm certain, judging by everybody who's here behind me, that's exactly where that money is going to go.
The Curling Commission this year didn't come up with a funding formula. We all know that. But is this sort of in response, is this sort of emergency measure to get this additional $4.1 billion gap? Is this sort of in response to the Curling Commission not being able to come up with a funding formula for this year?
Not really. I mean, the Kerwin Commission, the Senate President made a decision to move school construction funding and Kerwin together. And, the thinking is that we need a commitment from all jurisdictions who have an interest in funding for capital and funding for operations, that we stick together next year and treat this as a singular problem. And so even though the House passed it overwhelmingly, the decision was to bundle the two things together and treat them together next year. I'm optimistic. I know that a lot of us went down, asked them to go forward on the Kerwin funding, particularly for the schools this year, because we all promised that we'd be down next year to support Kerwin funding and the operational aspects. But the thinking was otherwise. They wanted to make sure we'd show up next year, so we'll be back next year.
And are we going to have to delay construction on schools now due to this funding not coming in for the bill not passing?
No, this is actually, right now, we are almost equal. We're a couple $1 million short of our starting point, but there's more money in the state budget that we expect to be allocated. And we actually expect at the end of the day to have more capital money than we had last year, and not just a couple of million. It's potential. It's not hundreds of millions, but it's potential for more money. So we're going to fund what we thought we could fund in capital. I think we're going to go a little bit beyond that. We've got a project that there's some interest in it. If we get some extra capital, I think if Kerwin delivers next year, it's going to be a big deal for Montgomery County. It's not going to solve everything, but it's going to let us make a significant dent in capital programs in the school over the next 4 years.
Mr. Eldridge, can you say where you are with the choice of getting a new chief of police? Have you done any interviews? How many applicants do you have?
I haven't done any interviews. We're taking applicants. At one point I saw 19, and I think it's grown since then. But we've decided we're going to do that first. And we'll use what comes out of that to help inform how we do our interviews with candidates. And hopefully candidates will have a better idea of what the community is looking for and we're all looking for together. This is an appointment of a whole different magnitude, because the interaction of police and the community is just critical to trust and critical to community building. And we're going to make sure this is done in a way that both the residents feel they've had a chance to hear and be heard, and that the people who do the actual interviews with, the chief, including myself, that we know that we can represent what the residents of our community want. I want a police chief who knows what the expectations are pretty clearly. I don't want to change expectations on somebody after they're on the force.
I'd like to go back to the budget. This is either for Chair Richmond Evans or for Dr. Smith. How will this money, if it's passed by the council, affect students in the classrooms? Like, what changes will be made?
Most of the new money in the budget this year is about adding additional staff to our focus schools. Those are schools from 35% to 67% poverty. It's adding language exploratory and continuing to build out on our STEM programs in the elementary and middle schools. It's reducing class size guidelines across all schools, and that'll be a small change, but it's headed in the right direction. It's continuing to support programs to build out career pathways across the county. So most of the new money is intertwined with existing money to expand and extend those programs.
How long will it take to change the staffing guidelines or class size guidelines?
When the budget is adopted, then those guidelines will be dropped for next year in elementary schools across the system by 1 or 2 students. And it depends on the school and the grade level, but that all is part of what is built into this new money as well as existing money.
Dr. Smith, I understand there may have been an effort by you, or perhaps by the families of the victims of the Damascus High School rape cases, to have a meeting. Has that happened? Is that your intention?
I'm sorry, a meeting with,
Victims?
no,
Damascus?
yeah, no, I have had no meeting with them as of this
They
time.
asked for a meeting?
The victims have not. I did have one meeting scheduled with a parent, but he canceled on March 29th. And then we had another meeting scheduled, and that one had to be canceled too. So, yes, Kathleen?
The parents claimed that you canceled the meeting.
No, on March 29th, the parent canceled, but I really can't discuss that here. That's all I'm going to say, okay? Thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate you being here today, and we will continue our work. Thank you so much.